What is up, everyone? It's Theguyhere, and welcome to Themindhere, the bi-weekly podcast where I provide updates about my YouTube channel, discuss what I do behind the scenes, and talk about other things that come to mind. It also serves as a way to keep myself accountable and externally motivated to get my work done. If you're interested in how I make my music and videos, feel free to take a look at some previous episodes. Welcome to all of you who are here for the first time. If you like my content and want to see more, please consider subscribing. As always, let's start off the episode by talking about the progress for the channel and channel content. So I really have two projects that I'm working on for this channel at the moment. The first one is a Vocaloid cover of a song, and the second one is a The Think episode where I talk a bit about blockchain technology. With regards to progress, the song, unfortunately, I didn't make too much progress on. I took a look at the vocal samples, the vocal that I was going to put into the song, so I've tweaked around with that. But other than that, I haven't done too much work on it, and I'll sort of explain a little bit about what's been going on later in this episode, but unfortunately, I didn't get that much progress on that. And the other thing is the think about blockchain technology. That is something that I've gotten into recently, and I wanted to do more research into it. So I've been doing a lot of research behind this. So what I'll be doing is I'll be taking that and my research, and I'll be compiling it into a video. And overall, actually, I'm going to probably be changing the think structure a little bit, especially after that first episode. I know a little bit more about what I want from the video now, how much it takes to make the video, and what I just really want out of it. My thinking is that with the think episodes, I don't want it to take too much time in the form of like some of the really good educational content where it goes into a deep dive about the content. Unfortunately, there's a lot of content already out there about most of these topics, so me adding to it won't add too much, since my videos won't probably be at the high level of quality like those other ones, and honestly, they do a lot better job of explaining it. What instead the primary purpose of the Think episodes do, they are mostly to get myself to solidify these concepts in my mind so that I can make sure that I understand these concepts, but also add my input into these. And I think that's where the value of my videos come in. I will be adding some input into it, along with just a basic explanation so that people don't come into it without a clue. But I'll also, in that video, I'll probably provide some sources of where I looked and got my research. So that way it can be a good point to sort of push off of. If you found yourself interested in the concepts or the ideas, you can use that video to look for some other better educational videos. So I'll be changing the structure and making sure that the structure of the video aligns with the purpose more, so that way I can get these videos out a bit easier. That way it's not really holding me back when I do all the research and learning of this stuff, because I do want to do a lot more extensive research into these areas that I'm interested in, but I don't want the Think episodes to take a long time to make. So you'll notice a change in that when those videos come out. And speaking of some changes, one of the changes that I'm going to make is that I might start a playlist on this channel where I put some more tests and also possibly live streams of just various things I'm doing, whether that's I'm bored and I want to play games and I'll be streaming that, or I'll be streaming some of my test progress or something like that. But I want to put a playlist out there that is a public playlist, so you can go and watch the videos if you want to, but the videos themselves, either the stream or the videos, the test videos, they will be unlisted, so that it's not really going to be searchable unless you really want to take a look at it. It's just a way for me to put more content out there and put more of my progress out there without needing to make these more elaborate projects to put them, because what I realized is that I've been focusing a little bit too much on the project itself. But if I say do a test on improving my vocal tuning skills for my Vocaloid songs, if I do something like that where I do a little test, it's probably not going to be enough for a full-blown video. However, I could probably put that test onto YouTube, so that way I can put my progress on there so that I can sort of update you guys and show what I'm working on without needing to make these full-on projects that I might not be ready for or have the skills for. So that's just a way for me to get more content on there and not put out these projects which I've started to feel like I haven't really been improving as much of my skills as I wanted to, but instead just doing it for the sake of the project. So I'll have that playlist as a little bonus out there. And of course, I'll still be doing these episodes, so I'll have a consistent content for you guys. However, my projects may slow down their pace as I want to improve some of my skills. And also just with school adding on, I don't know if I'll be able to get more projects out. So it's a lot easier to get these sort of unstructured tests out on there without these full-blown projects. And another thing is that I might put some post some picture progresses on Instagram. I'll start using Instagram more, so if you haven't checked out my Instagram, you can head to my channel and there should be a link to that, or you can just search up Theguyhere YT on Instagram and you'll probably find me there. Now, in regards to some of the progress or lack of progress I talked about a little bit in this episode, this was because just throughout this, and you've probably, if you've been watching my previous episodes, you probably know my struggle and my journey through this. I was struggling again with some of my progress. I just wasn't feeling like my progress, my habits were going in the right direction. So what I did was I decided to do some reorganization. I changed my environment. As you can probably see, this setup is new compared to my previous episodes. So I cleaned out this a little bit, did some reorganization, and I also changed my organizational system that I use to put my projects in and to keep track of data, take notes on. I changed that up a little bit. And what this did was, this did three things for me. The first is that the change in the environment that I operated in, whether it's the virtual environment of my organization system or this physical environment, it helped me to sort of symbolize a turning point. And this was easier mentally for me to make a change in behavior and habit for myself, which so far has worked pretty well, so I'm pretty happy about. The second thing that this change in environment, was that the progress of, or the work of doing that, it helped me kickstart and gain the momentum of actually doing some work. Because the process of reorganizing things, especially the physical environment, takes a little bit more labor, and it doesn't require too much thought as long as I've gotten the structure down. So it helps me with already starting with some work, so that way I get in the momentum and the groove of doing something. So then I feel like, okay, I have been productive, I can be productive, so now I can do other things. And I gain that momentum, that productivity momentum, where you start off with some tasks that don't seem like too much. So if you don't want to do work, you could say, go do the dishes. And then once you've done the dishes, you have that momentum of doing work. You're in the mood of doing work, so then you can keep doing some of the more demanding tasks like your homework or something. So that's the second thing that it does. And the third thing is that it just helps me to reorganize and make my environment operate better. So for example, especially my organization system, once I finished that, it really helped me to realign myself and get my work going, because I sort of felt that some of my systems were starting to lag behind and fall out of purpose. So once I reconsolidated all of that and got it all together, it worked a lot more smoother, and that of course helped me with my productivity. So that helped me out, and I'm pretty happy with the progress. Of course, I've just finished this a few days ago, so I need a little more time for this to really sink in and to know if this is working. And one of the things that I think is helping me is that I did a little gamification of my life a little bit, where I tried to gamify some aspects of myself that I wanted to improve. So for example, with my physical health, there's like sleep, diet, and other areas like that. and some other areas like focus. And those things I put in a progress scale, so from like 1 to 10 or 0 to 10 in this case. So it's sort of like a progress indicator, where you have like an RPG or something where you have some stats. So I can take a look at those stats and have some of a visual, something visual to look at and say, okay, my progress is this far and I want to improve this way. So how can I improve? And that helped me out because I can really see that progress, whereas before I didn't really have that. It was more of just every once in a while I come back and think, okay, how was my progress? How could I be better? With this, the more visual aspect of it, it really helps me, especially since I'm a pretty visual learner. So having that is able to tell me and remind me of the progress and the statistics sort of that I need to keep track of. And another thing that I've done is that with rewards, as in any game, you have to sort of create that artificial scarcity where you can't allow yourself to gain all these rewards without having to do some work. So what I've done is I've locked behind my rewards, which to me would be various gaming aspects of various games. I've locked that behind some stats that I have to hit. So for example, my sleep has to be super good in order to get some of the really nice games that I like playing. And my focus also has to be there. So something like that where there's different tiers of rewards I can get. The funner games to me are locked behind higher requirements of just things that I have to be able to achieve. So better sleep schedules. I have to achieve that in order to be able to play games, the higher level games. And at the lower level, when I do need a break, but I still haven't hit those levels yet, I could probably do something like Sudoku or something that is still entertaining, still fun, but not quite as fun as I would have liked. And being able to do that creates sort of a loot table, a reward table for myself based off of my stats. This really helps me, and I haven't broken these rules, these artificial rules that I've set for myself yet, mostly because if once I staved off a little bit from the continuous distractions and all of that, I started to realize that, or start to feel that there was really no purpose behind all of that if I just continually gamed or continually got myself distracted. But it was a really nice feeling, or a really good boost of dopamine when I scheduled in some time that I was set as break, and I could access these various rewards depending on what my personal stats were at. So in some ways it almost felt like a game, but also I was sort of free of the guiltiness of being distracted, knowing that I had something I wanted to do, but I was just distracting myself with some other things. So it felt like I really earned it. And as I keep going and improving my personal stats and I unlock these other higher tiers of rewards, it really, after not playing these games, it really helps me value them more. Because if I keep playing them often, it sort of inflates the value and the value sort of drops. But if I don't play it that much and I had to work for it, then it feels like something. It feels like I earned it, and it's a lot more valuable to me. So that really helps me out. But of course, one thing that I have to be cautious of with this gamification is the quantification or quantization, whatever, of putting these various statistics into numbers. Putting things into numbers is sort of dangerous because if you focus too much on the numbers or the metric, then you might forget what the purpose of the whole metric is. So if I start reward gaming or start to sort of exploit some of these metrics, try to aim for these metrics without actually doing what they want me to, so like get my sleep score really high even though my sleep really sucks. So if I do something like that, then I have to be wary of this, because numbers are really an abstraction of the what we want to represent, what we want to know about the world. It's like you're collecting data, of course, but what you really want to collect, especially with some of these things related to more qualitative things. So something like your GPA, for example, that's something that's numbers based off of more qualitative results. If I have a sleep score, that's something based more off of qualitative results. They could be based on some quantitative things like hours of sleep and stuff like that that are truly quantitative. But we have to be careful, because if we focus too much on those metrics, then it can become dangerous. And speaking of these numbers and all of that, another thing that I was thinking about throughout this process of redesigning and thinking of these new systems, I realized that numbers are pretty dangerous by themselves. Numbers, I talked about how if you use them for metrics, it could be dangerous if you focus too much on it, and you could fall for Goodhart's law, which is when a metric becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So not the exact quote, but it's roughly what that is. When you focus too much on that metric, it stops being a good measure of something. It's supposed to tell you something. You're not supposed to sort of game it in order to get something else. So that's one danger of numbers, when you abstract away things. But another danger of numbers is that sometimes without context, data can be quite dangerous, because you might assume or you might find some evidence to support you without actually looking into it. Because you can have one set of data, one set of raw data, and you can have two completely different views saying that this data supports their view. If you don't have any context or anything to sort of package that number up into something that is more defined and more something that is not just the naked number where it could mean anything depending on how you want to interpret it, then that number really doesn't do much other than saying, okay, this is something that I've recorded. So if we're assuming this number is true, if we have some data that is true data, if you don't process or analyze it, then you could take that, and depending on what your model is, what your lens is, you might confirmation bias might kick in, and you might say, oh, that supports this view that I have. But in reality, that may or may not actually be what it does. So that is another dangerous thing about numbers. And of course, human beings, we're all biased in some ways whenever we look at these numbers, which is why the confirmation bias sort of kicks in. And whenever we look at numbers, we want it to support the current view, because it's difficult and it's almost painful to change our point of view. And that's one other thing that I was also thinking of this week with the thought about these numbers, is that human beings are inherently biased. And whenever you hear about some news outlet or some other media that claims that they are unbiased, that's really not the case, because we all have our own individual models and ideas in our heads, right? This is how we view the world. We need a model to be able to represent the world, so that the data we take in, we can make actions that correspond to it, that move us towards our goals. We are inherently biased because our models are different from each other. And whatever we do, since we are using those models, we will always be sort of supporting our models. So whenever we say that we're not biased, what we really should be aiming for is aiming for understanding, where we say, okay, I have this sort of bias, where let's say, for example, I have a libertarian bias, so take all this with a grain of salt. You now understand, or you now know what kind of lens I am looking this data through. But now that you know that, you can sort of adjust for it. And when someone is able to say, okay, this is the view I'm going to take a look at, or this is some of the bias that I may have, but I'll be presenting this data nonetheless in a way that isn't sort of attacking or flat out trying to avoid or just changing some other narrative in order to help you. If you're presenting the data in a way that, like, this is how I see it, then I feel like a lot of other people would be a lot more understanding and more receptive to that data. And if you expose yourself and say, okay, this is some of the bias that I may have, take that in mind, but I'll present this to you, then people become a lot more trusting of you. This is something that I see that is lacking in a lot of the major media out there. There is a lot more of focus on, oh, we are unbiased, which clearly is not true. But there's a lot less lacking of saying, okay, we do have this bias, but nonetheless, we are going to present it how we see it, but we're not going to invalidate other people's models. That is important there, not invalidating other people's models, because we all have different models and all models are wrong. All models are not reality, so therefore they are pretty much all wrong. But some models are useful, and depending on who you are, it may be more or less useful to you. You get to choose that model, which is important. But you don't get to see the entire reality or claim that you know the entire reality. So just keep that in mind whenever you either watch a media source or when you're presenting things. To keep in mind that human beings are biased, but you've got to take into account for that. Rather than fighting it and say, no, this is unbiased, you've got to take into account and say, okay, I have these biases, or okay, they have these biases. What can I take away from it regardless? All right, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. We don't have an AMA question for this episode, but if you'd like to contribute to these episodes and want to ask me a question, go ahead and go to my YouTube video of this podcast episode and go into the comment section, leave a question down below, and if you leave it before I upload my next video, then I'll choose one at random if there are more than one, and I will answer it in the next episode. Thank you guys so much for your support, and thank you all for watching. I appreciate all the support you guys have given me throughout my journey and my progress. I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you in the next episode.